Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we're diving into something truly fascinating, the science of why we act the way we do under pressure. I mean, did you know that the severe stress your grandparents faced might actually be dictating how your heart is racing right now? It sounds wild, but it's true. If you've ever wondered why your own reactions sometimes feel completely, hopelessly out of your control, you are exactly in the right place. We are going to look at how our history and the history of those who came way before us is quite literally written into our biology. So why do we constantly sabotage ourselves? I want you to think back for a second. Recall a time you just snapped at a loved one over something incredibly minor, or maybe you completely froze up during a critical presentation at work. It is so easy to beat yourself up in the aftermath and view those moments as deep, inherent character flaws, but we really need to reframe that right now. Treat that moment not as a personal failure, but as a biological mystery, and it's one we're going to solve together today. Well, I absolutely love sharing this because it is just so validating. It is not you, it's your biology. The research clearly shows that these seemingly irrational, frustrating reactions are actually highly coherent attempts by your nervous system to keep you alive. When your body senses a threat, it does what it thinks it absolutely has to do to keep you safe, even if that deeply undermines your long-term well-being in our modern, everyday world. All right, let's jump right into section 1, your nervous system's autopilot. Have you ever heard the term amygdala hijack? Under intense stress, your amygdala, which is basically your brain's built-in threat detector, suddenly sounds a massive alarm. It rapidly fires up your sympathetic nervous system. But at the exact same time, your prefrontal cortex, the logical, conscious, deliberate part of your brain, effectively just goes offline. You completely lose your higher-order decision-making capacity. You are entirely taken over by preconscious, autonomic processes. You're on autopilot. Now, polyvagal theory frames this in a really fascinating way. These aren't just random acts of panic, right? They are a highly structured, hierarchical organization of defense circuits. Your nervous system is systematically cycling through these deeply ingrained autonomic programs: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. It is a desperate, rapid-fire bid to reestablish a sense of safety when the alarm bells are ringing. There is a brilliant quote from Dr. Joseph P. Delaney about this. He points out that, over time, these automatized responses become so incredibly familiar to us that we actually mistake them for fixed personality traits. We catch ourselves saying, I'm just an anxious person, or I've just got a short temper. But often, they are simply state-dependent programs shaped by your prior experiences and your physiological bias. It's not who you intrinsically are. Okay, let's zoom out a bit for section 2, the biological code of trauma. You see, our individual programming doesn't just happen in a vacuum. Research into intergenerational trauma reveals the immense power of something called epigenetics. Consider the Dutch hunger winter of 1944. The children, and incredibly, even the grandchildren of the women who survived that severe famine, were born with altered metabolisms. They were significantly more prone to conditions like obesity and diabetes long after the famine had ended. When populations face severe stressors, like famine, war, or systemic oppression, it literally leaves lasting biological marks. These environmentally responsive modifications change how our genes express themselves, especially regarding our stress response systems. And it does this without altering the underlying DNA sequence itself. It means trauma can quite literally be passed down. To put that into perspective, think of your genome as your computer's fixed hardware. It's the foundational DNA template for your physiological systems. But your epigenome, that is the adaptable software. It carries these context-sensitive annotations that shape the probability of how you're going to respond to stress. It actively tilts your nervous system toward particular patterns of arousal based entirely on transgenerational trauma. It's a fascinating system, which beautifully tees up section 3, ancestors, epigenetics, and karma. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that DNA and the epigenome function as encrypted behavior from the past. We literally embody the unresolved stresses and the adaptive survival strategies of prior generations. We are walking, breathing archives of ancestral adaptations. Dr. Delaney has an amazing integrative framework that stacks this inheritance into 4 distinct layers. First, you have the biological genome. That provides your base template. Then, the epigenetic layer adds those critical environmental annotations we just talked about. Third is the experiential nervous system, which is consolidating your daily habitual perceptual programs. And finally, there's a 4th metaphysical layer, the soul. This overlays the biology with a karmic trajectory and a chosen curriculum. When we view this biological inheritance through a contemplative lens, we arrive at the concept of karmic imprints. And honestly, this completely reframes our recurring life challenges. Instead of viewing habitual fear, shame, or self-sabotage as just random misfortune or curse, we can see them as deliberate, structured invitations for the soul's evolution. They are built-in challenges carried via the epigenome, purposefully prompting us to cultivate courage and compassion precisely because of those inherited constraints. All right, let's get practical with Section 4, rewriting your biological script. So take a deep breath because here comes the really good news. Your nervous system is highly plastic. Your genetic code is not your destiny. Studies tracking everyone from elite special forces personnel to long-term mindfulness practitioners consistently prove one thing: our autonomic nervous systems are highly trainable. We actually have the power to change our baseline. So how do we actually run this update? Well, following these steps systematically widens what we call our window of tolerance. By using coherent, slowed-down breathing to gain interoceptive awareness, we can actively tune in to our bodily sensations without panicking. Then, engaging in graded exposure to things that lightly trigger us slowly builds resilience over time. And finally, by practicing cognitive reframing, we actively weaken the link between specific triggers and our habitual defensive responses. We are literally teaching the body that it is safe to remain present. Let's bring it all home with Section 5, from enslavement to stewardship. This brings us to a really powerful concept called TriSync. It's an integrative framework specifically designed for this exact transformational process. TriSync acts as the ultimate tool to help you move away from being an unconscious executor of your inherited programs. It empowers you to finally step up as the conscious co-author of your own life. To do this, TriSync basically aligns three crucial gears. First is the neurophysiological. That's achieving that essential brain-body coherence. Second is the educational cognitive, building a conscious waking understanding of your hidden patterns. And third is the contemplative spiritual, applying that overarching karmic framing we discussed earlier. Aligning these three distinct domains transforms the exhausting experience of feeling like a slave to your biology into a true, actionable path of embodied freedom. And think about how this actually applies in our daily practical lives. When you fully embrace this biological understanding, it completely transforms classrooms, workplaces, and your intimate relationships. You shift from blaming others to having genuine curiosity. You stop pathologizing behavior and you start contextualizing it. This fosters such deep empathy, co-regulation, and mutual healing. It completely disrupts those toxic cycles of shame and retaliation. It's a real game changer. So, I want to leave you with a real question to chew on. The next time you feel that familiar rush of panic, anger, or the overwhelming urge to completely shut down, remember this. Every single moment you manage to stay present without collapsing into old routines, you are quite literally rewriting your biological script. Will you execute the code of the past, or will you rewrite your future? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating topic with me. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.